The highest-scoring soccer game in history recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records was 149-0 between two teams in Madagascar in 2002. It happened because one of the teams began scoring on themselves in protest of a bad call by one of the referees. 24 women have made accusations that Donald Trump has elicited inappropriate sexual behavior over the previous 30 years. A group of camels is called a caravan. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, Walt Disney, and Mark Zuckerberg all dropped out of school. On the first day of school, children in Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic are given a cardboard cone filled with toys and sweets, known as a Schultut. In 1987, a German shepherd dog named Gabby in a Belgrade zoo once saved a zoo employee by fighting and defeating an escaped jaguar. For this, a monument was erected in her honor. The first ever ticket purchased to the first ever Comic-Con in New York was by George R.R. Martin in 1964. He was the first of only 30 people there that day. The Baobab tree native to Madagascar can hold up to 31,000 gallons 120 liters of water. The English word orange was the name of the fruit for a few hundred years before. The color was later named after the fruit. Before that, what we now know as orange was known as yeol or eid. Since 1945, all British tanks have come equipped with tea-making facilities. A tribe in West Africa known as the Matami tribe play a version of football which consists of using a human skull as the ball. The country with the longest coastline on Earth is Canada. From the pool of 2,500 participants, the average person spends 42 minutes a week, or almost 92 days over a lifetime, on the toilet. The Black Death in the 14th century is estimated to have killed 30–60% of Europe's total population. The information traveling inside your brain is moving at 268 miles per hour, 430 km per hour. Although the Holy Bible is available for free at many places of worship, it is the most stolen book in the world. A quarter of the world's prisoners are locked up in the U.S. A group of ferrets is called a business. Internet addiction disorder, also known as IAD, is a real mental disorder in which somebody engages in addictive, compulsive, or pathological internet use. Author J.K. Rowling wrote the final chapter of the last Harry Potter book in 1990, 7 years before the release of the first book. Christmas Island is a small Australian island located in the Indian Ocean that every year sees 50 million adult crabs migrate from the forest to breed, known as the annual red crab migration. Colombia's underground drug cartel trades as much as $10 billion, which is more than the country's legal exports. The first man-made element was technetium, created in 1937. It is used for medical diagnostic studies and as a corrosion inhibitor for steel. Over 50% of all lottery tickets sold are bought by only 5% of people who buy lottery tickets. The Curiosity rover sang Happy Birthday to itself on Mars to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of landing on the planet in 2013. Russia trained and deployed 40,000 anti-tank dogs in World War II. The dogs were loaded with explosives and trained to run under tanks where they would be detonated. Except many of the dogs became scared and ran back to their owners' trenches where they killed their own people. The unbroken seal on Tutankhamun's tomb went untouched for 3,245 years until 1942. The crew of Apollo 15 placed a small aluminum sculpture on the moon to memorialize fallen astronauts. In 1971, that number was 14. There's also a plaque bearing their names. The rarest wild cat in the world is the Bornean bay cat. Only 12 have ever been captured and studied between the years of 1874 and 2002. That's one every 10 years. During the late 1800s, a baboon named Jack was employed by the railroad in Cape Town, South Africa as a signalman. He never once made a mistake and worked for the railroad until his death. In 1991, drug lord Pablo Escobar got to build his own prison known as La Cathedral. It featured a soccer field, a giant dollhouse, a bar, a jacuzzi, and a waterfall. It's where he stayed for only 1 year and 1 month after he was caught torturing his guests. In the 1870s, William Shanks spent 15 years of his life calculating pi to 707 places, by hand. However, the last few years were wasted as he made a mistake after the 5 to 7th digit. In 1954, a flight Ernest Hemingway was on crash-landed in Africa. He and his companions were rescued and put in another plane, which burst into flames on the runway. Finding the door jammed, Hemingway used his head as a battering ram, butted the door twice and got out. Dollar is an anglicized version of the Dutch daler, which was in heavy use in the Caribbean and New Amsterdam, New York from 1600 to 1800s. The daler is short for the German Joachimsthaler, a currency that was produced in the 1300s in Joachimsthal, Bohemia. There is a population of radioactive wild boars in Germany, contaminated by radioactivity left over from the Chernobyl nuclear meltdown over 2 decades ago, and their number is rising. Los Angeles once had the largest electric rail system in the world, until automobile, tire, and oil companies bought and dismantled it, along with mass transit systems in 44 other U.S. cities. The mass transit systems were replaced with freeways and buses, thereby increasing the sales of cars, tires, and oil. A lawyer in Toronto fell to his death in 1993 after he threw himself against a window on the 24th floor of a building in an attempt to prove to a group of visitors that the glass was unbreakable, an act he had done twice before. The glass did not break, but popped out of the window frame and he died. Cats, unlike dogs, cannot for physiological reasons resulting in blindness and death be vegetarian. Leonardo da Vinci deliberately left errors in the designs of his inventions in order to prevent it from being put to practice by unauthorized people. Bermuda Triangle has had as many disappearances as any other part of the oceans of similar size, and many of the mysteries attributed to it happened outside of the triangle. In North Korea, citizens are forced to choose one of 28 government-approved haircuts. There exists a museum in Massachusetts which is dedicated to exhibiting shitty art that is too bad to be ignored. 1968, 2 boys playing in a deserted and rat-infested tenement found the body of a 31-year-old drug addict, surrounded by religious pamphlets and empty beer bottles. Not until 19 months later was the body identified as that of child actor Bobby Driscoll, Academy Award winner and the voice of Peter Pan. The British government's advisor on illegal drugs was fired in 2009 after arguing that ecstasy and LSD were less dangerous than alcohol and tobacco. A British man was so fed up with cold callers he set up his own premium rate number, which he asked them to call instead, netting him around £7 a month. In the 1990s, a national survey found that Mario was more recognizable to American children than Mickey Mouse. 3-mile limit for international waters was created as this was the maximum distance a cannonball could travel from the shore. Star Trek Scotty, James Doohan, was a CDN soldier during WW2, who landed on Juno Beach, killed 2 snipers and cleared a minefield before even getting off the beachhead. While Samuel Morse was in New York, he received a letter that warned of his wife's illness. Morse left for home, but arrived to find his wife already buried. Heartbroken that for days he was unaware of his wife's illness and death, led him to research and patent the telegraph 22 years later. High heels used to be an essential accessory for horseback riders and weren't associated with being feminine. Approximately 50% of the population of the USA is nearsighted. Of the 31,000 suicides in the USA each year, 60–80 are associated with depression or manic depression. Atropine, a drug that blocks the action of the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, comes from the plant called the deadly nightshade. Belladonna is Italian for beautiful lady. As people age, their ears get larger. Ear circumference increases on average 0.51 millimeters per year. The brain of a worker honeybee weighs only 1 milligram.